He'll never make it back to port. I dropped my medicine bottle, hearing my son's cold calculation. My name is George Williams, and I'm 73 years old. For the past year, I've been pretending to have Alzheimer's disease to test my family's loyalty. But I just discovered my son David has been planning to make me disappear permanently on what he calls a gift cruise. The cruise brochure on their coffee table wasn't for a vacation. It was for a one-way trip I'd never return from. David's voice was shaking as he told his wife Nancy, "The insurance will cover everything once he's gone." I should have walked away, should have confronted them immediately. But instead, I did what any retired lawyer would do. I started gathering evidence. My coffee mug trembled in my hands as I shuffled back toward my bedroom, letting them think I'd heard nothing. "Dad, are you okay back there?" David called out sweetly. "Just fine, son, just fine." The next morning, I acted more confused than usual. David and Nancy watched me like hawks, their fake concern thicker than honey. I let my reading glasses slip down my nose, squinting at the newspaper. I palmed my morning pills instead of swallowing them. I photographed documents when they weren't looking. "Dad, you forgot your medicine again," Nancy said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I'm just tired, sweetheart. So tired. But my mind was razor sharp. I found medical cruise specialists in David's browser history, websites about dignified end-of-life care at sea, forums discussing how ocean accidents happen to elderly passengers. David had researched everything: international waters, no jurisdiction issues, insurance payouts for accidental deaths. My own son had planned my murder down to the last detail. Nancy's cheap perfume made my stomach turn as she fussed over my forgotten pills. David's palms left sweat marks on every document he touched. They thought they were so careful, so clever. They had no idea they were dealing with a man who'd spent 40 years building legal cases, who knew how to document evidence, who understood that the best defense is a perfect offense. I needed to know more. How deep did this go? How long had they been planning this? "We should book the cruise soon," Nancy whispered to David. "While he's still manageable." They threw me a birthday party 3 days later, a celebration of my 73rd year, and unknowingly what they believed would be my last. The living room filled with relatives I barely saw anymore, cousins, nephews, David's work friends. Everyone gathered to witness David's generous gift to his poor, declining father. I played my part perfectly, confused about names, uncertain about dates, grateful but bewildered by their attention. Nancy positioned her phone to record everything. Evidence for later, I realized. Proof that I was mentally incompetent when David made his generous offer. The birthday cake sat untouched on the coffee table. Chocolate with white frosting. It looked beautiful, but I couldn't swallow a bite. Everything tasted like ash. "Dave's such a devoted son," my nephew Jim said, clapping David on the shoulder. "Taking care of you like this." "This cruise is so generous," added David's coworker Sarah. "You're lucky to have him." David beamed under the praise. He pulled out the cruise tickets with a flourish, waving them for everyone to see. "It's a Mediterranean cruise, Dad. 2 weeks of beautiful weather, great food, relaxation. You deserve this after everything you've been through." The crowd murmured approval. Flash photography lit up the room as Nancy captured every moment. But I noticed something else. My granddaughter Rachel sat in the corner watching me with sharp eyes. She wasn't smiling like the others. She wasn't buying the performance. When our eyes met across the room, she tilted her head slightly. A question. A recognition. Rachel was 16, smart as a whip, planning to study pre-law. She'd always been observant, always asked the hard questions that made adults uncomfortable. "Grandpa," she said quietly, approaching my chair. "Are you excited about the cruise?" I looked into her young face, seeing intelligence and concern. "I'm grateful, sweetheart. Your father worked so hard to take care of me." She nodded slowly, but her eyes told a different story. She knew something was wrong. The party continued around us. More photos, more praise for David's selfless care. Nancy organized group shots with the cruise tickets prominently displayed. "This will be such a wonderful memory," Nancy gushed, adjusting the camera angle. Indeed it would be, just not the kind of memory she expected. As guests began leaving, each one hugged me goodbye. Some said they'd miss me while I was gone. Others joked about sending postcards. None of them knew they were saying goodbye forever. David walked the last guests to their cars. Nancy cleaned up wrapping paper and empty plates. I sat in my chair, holding the cruise tickets in my trembling hands. Not trembling from age or confusion. Trembling with rage. Rachel lingered by the front door. "Grandpa," Can I visit you tomorrow? Just us? Of course, sweetheart, anytime. After she left, the house fell silent except for David and Nancy's whispered planning in the kitchen. The ship leaves in 6 weeks, David said. That gives us time to handle the paperwork. And time for his condition to worsen, Nancy added. More evidence. I folded the cruise tickets carefully and slipped them into my shirt pocket. Evidence indeed. That night, while David and Nancy slept, I searched David's home office. His filing system revealed the scope of their planning. Insurance policies with recent beneficiary changes. Power of attorney documents waiting for my signature. Medical reports describing my deteriorating condition. Reports I'd never authorized. My hands shook as I photographed each document, not from Alzheimer's, but from pure fury. Bank statements showed David's gambling debts, credit cards maxed out, loan shark interest accumulating weekly. He owed $180,000 to people who didn't take payment plans. A crumpled letter fell from behind his desk drawer. The letterhead made my blood run cold. Northside Collection Services. Mr. Williams, this is your final notice. Payment of $180,000 plus interest is due immediately. Continued non-payment will result in collection actions against you and your family members. We know where you work. We know where your father lives. The letter was dated 2 months ago. Everything clicked into place. David wasn't just greedy. He was desperate, terrified. The cruise wasn't about inheritance money. It was about survival. But that didn't excuse murder. I found more documents hidden in his desk. Internet searches about life insurance payouts. Forums discussing accident-prone cruise ship areas. Printed articles about elderly passengers who'd gone overboard. David had done his homework. International waters meant limited investigation. My advanced Alzheimer's meant I might wander off, become confused, fall overboard accidentally. A perfect crime. I photographed everything. The threatening letters, the gambling debts, the falsified medical reports, the insurance policy changes. 40 years of legal practice had taught me one thing: document everything, build an airtight case, present facts, not emotions. But I found something else that broke my heart. Hidden behind family photos was David's journal. His handwriting grew shakier with each entry. Dad doesn't remember my name anymore. Maybe this is mercy. He's getting worse. Nancy says it's better this way. If he disappears, we can all move on. He won't suffer anymore. David had convinced himself that murdering me was an act of kindness. The last entry was dated yesterday. The cruise is booked. 6 weeks. I can't look at his confused face anymore. This will be better for everyone. I closed the journal and returned it to its hiding place. David genuinely believed I was disappearing into dementia, that I was already gone, just waiting for my body to follow my mind. He'd never suspected that his confused, forgetful father was actually documenting every conversation, photographing every document, building a case that would destroy him. But I felt something I hadn't expected. Pity. David was drowning. The gambling, the debts, the threats. They'd pushed him to a place where murdering his father seemed like the only solution. Nancy was different. Her journal entries were calculating, cold. She'd mapped out insurance payouts, discussed David's inheritance, planned their debt-free future. She wasn't desperate. She was opportunistic. I gathered my evidence and returned to my bedroom. 6 weeks until the cruise. 6 weeks to decide how to handle this. I could call the police, have them arrested, send my son to prison, or I could be smarter. I could beat them at their own game. The next morning, I called my old law partner Margaret under the pretense of confusion about my papers. "George, you sound worried," she said after I explained my concerns about family finances. I think people might be taking advantage of my condition, Margaret. I need help." We met at her office that afternoon. Margaret, sharp as ever at 75, listened as I revealed the truth. "Jesus, George, how long have you been playing this game?" "A year. I wanted to test their loyalty. I never imagined—" "You never imagined they'd plan to kill you," she finished. "What do you want to do?" I spread David's documents across her conference table. The gambling debts, the insurance forms, the cruise bookings. I want to protect myself legally, build a case. If something happens to me, I want them prosecuted. Margaret studied the evidence with professional detachment. This is elder abuse, insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit murder. David's looking at 25 to life. Nancy's an accessory. I know, but I need more than evidence. I need protection. We spent 3 hours developing my strategy. First, revoke all powers of attorney. David couldn't make legal decisions for me anymore. Second, update my will.
Everything would go to Rachel and selected charities. David would receive nothing. Third, establish an irrevocable trust. My assets would be protected even if I became truly incapacitated. Fourth, document everything. Hidden cameras, audio recordings, photographic evidence.
If they follow through with this cruise plan, Margaret said, we'll have them cold. What if they change their minds? Cancel the cruise? Then you've protected yourself from financial abuse. Either way, you win. Margaret's secretary notarized each document. I signed papers with my father's old fountain pen, the one he'd used to build his legal practice 60 years ago. Each signature felt like armor. Each page created a legal fortress around my life and assets. There's one more thing, Margaret said. Personal protection. If David gets desperate enough to kill you, he might not wait for the cruise. I've thought of that. I'm changing the locks, upgrading security, creating paper trails everywhere I go. Smart. And George? Stop playing the Alzheimer's patient. You're sharper than most lawyers half your age. I tore up an old family photo on my way out. David, Nancy, and me at last year's Christmas dinner. Everyone smiling. Everyone pretending. The photo felt symbolic. That family was already dead. Now I was just making it official. Margaret walked me to my car. When do you plan to confront them? When I'm ready, when all the pieces are in place. And if they come after you before then, they won't. They need me alive and cooperative for 6 more weeks. After that won't be their decision anymore. I drove home with a briefcase full of legal documents, powers of attorney, trust agreements, updated wills, insurance changes. David and Nancy thought they were playing chess. They didn't realize I'd been playing for 40 years longer. That evening, David asked about my doctor appointment. Just routine paperwork, son. Nothing important. Did you remember to take your pills? Nancy reminded me. I never forget when she's around. He smiled, believing I was complimenting his wife's care. I was actually documenting her systematic poisoning, the mild sedatives she'd been slipping into my coffee for months, the memory-affecting drugs hidden in my vitamins, the careful dosing designed to make my Alzheimer's more convincing. But I'd been dumping those pills for weeks. My mind was clearer than ever. Tomorrow I'd start the next phase, changing locks, securing accounts, creating an impenetrable barrier around my life. Let them plan their cruise. I was planning something much more permanent. I started small, boundaries they wouldn't immediately notice. The vitamins Nancy brought me each morning went straight into my shirt pocket instead of my mouth. The coffee she prepared with such care got dumped in the bathroom sink when she wasn't looking. Within 3 days my head felt clearer. The fog I'd attributed to age lifted like morning mist. I'd been drugged for months. You seem more alert today, Dad, David said over breakfast, suspicion creeping into his voice. Good days and bad days, son. The doctor says that's normal. But I started cooking my own meals, simple things. Oatmeal, eggs, toast. I can help with that, Nancy offered, reaching for my pan. I need to keep my hands busy. Helps with the confusion. I changed my bank passwords that afternoon, created new accounts at a different bank, transferred money in small amounts that wouldn't trigger alerts. David thought he had access to my finances. He was wrong. I planted an herb garden in my backyard. Basil, rosemary, thyme, fresh starts growing in dark soil. The physical work felt good. Dirt under my fingernails, sun on my shoulders, life sprouting from seeds. Mrs. Johnson from next door watched me work. Haven't seen you gardening in years, George. Needed a new project, something to grow. She helped me arrange the plant markers, her weathered hands steady on the small stakes. David says you're having some difficulties. David says many things. Mrs. Johnson studied my face. She'd been a nurse for 30 years before retiring. She knew the difference between confusion and clarity. You seem fine to me, George. Some days are better than others. I watered the seedlings carefully. Each plant represented something I was taking back. My health, my finances, my future. That evening, David noticed the herb garden through the kitchen window. When did you plant those? This afternoon. Can't remember exactly when. He frowned. The organized rows, the precise spacing, the careful plant selection, none of it looked like the work of someone with dementia. Maybe I should help you with the gardening, Dad. Make sure you don't overdo it. I can manage, it's just plants. But I could see him calculating, wondering if I was more capable than I appeared. Nancy brought my evening pills as usual. I palmed them expertly, letting her think I'd swallowed them. "Your color looks better," she said. "More energy today." The gardening helped, kept my hands busy. Well, don't tire yourself out. You need your strength for the cruise. 6 weeks, I thought. 6 weeks until they expect me to board that ship. I watered my herbs again before bed. The basil was already sprouting true leaves. The rosemary showed hints of green. By the time the cruise ship left port, this garden would be flourishing, and I would still be here to tend it. Mrs. Johnson appeared at my fence the next morning as I watered the herb garden. "George, can I ask you something?" "Of course, Helen." "David's been asking me to keep an eye on you. Says you're having memory problems." I continued watering, considering my response carefully. "What do you think? Do I seem confused to you?" She studied me for a long moment. "You planted those herbs in perfect rows, measured the spacing, chose plants that complement each other. That's not the work of someone with dementia." I set down the watering can and met her eyes. "Helen, I need to tell you something. But I need your word that you'll keep it between us." "You have it. I'm not sick. David and Nancy think I am, but I'm not. They're planning something. Difficult." Her face hardened. 30 years of nursing had shown her every form of elder abuse. "What kind of something?" I told her about the cruise, the overheard conversation, the insurance documents. Not everything, but enough. "Those bastards," she whispered. "What can I do?" "Watch the house when I'm gone. Document who comes and goes. If something happens to me, call this number." I handed her Margaret's business card. "George, you can't go on that cruise." "I have to. It's the only way to get enough evidence to stop them permanently." What if you don't come back?" "Then you'll have this conversation recorded on your phone, won't you?" She looked confused until I pointed to her cell phone, which had been recording our entire conversation. Smart man, always thinking like a lawyer. Some habits never die.
We established a system. Helen would note every visitor, every delivery, every suspicious activity. She'd photograph anyone who entered my house while I was supposed to be on the cruise. David and Nancy think I'll disappear at sea. When I don't, when I return safely, their reaction will tell us everything we need to know. And if they try to stop you from returning, then we'll have attempted murder on tape. Helen brought me fresh cookies that afternoon, homemade oatmeal raisins still warm from her oven. Thought you might be hungry after all that gardening. Thank you, Helen. You're very kind. We sat on my back porch, sharing cookies and watching the herb garden grow. Your basil's coming along nicely, she said. It's amazing what grows when you give it proper care. And what dies when you don't. She understood perfectly. David came home from work as Helen was leaving. He watched our exchange with obvious suspicion. What did Mrs.
Johnson want? She brought cookies. We talked about gardening. You seem to have a long conversation. She's lonely. Her husband died last year. Right. Well, try not to bother the neighbors, Dad. We don't want them to worry about you. I'll be more careful, son. But Helen wasn't a neighbor anymore. She was an ally. Margaret and I spent the next week building my legal fortress, piece by piece. First, the power of attorney revocation. I signed the documents at her office with 2 witnesses and a notary present. This revokes all previous authorizations, Margaret explained as I signed. David no longer has any legal authority over your affairs. The ink felt permanent under my pen. Final. Next, the new will. Everything reorganized to protect what mattered most. Your estate will go primarily to Rachel's education fund, with smaller amounts to charities. David receives nothing. What about Nancy? Nancy was never in your original will. She remains absent from this one. I signed each page deliberately. My father's fountain pen scratched across the legal papers, sealing David's financial future, or lack thereof. The trust documents came next. Irrevocable, unbreakable, designed to protect my assets even if I became truly incapacitated. If something happens to you, Margaret said, Rachel becomes the trust beneficiary at age 25. Until then, the assets are managed by the bank. And if David challenges it, he can try, but you're clearly competent, the documents are properly witnessed, and he has no legal standing. We moved to the bank afterward, new accounts, different institution, requiring 2 signatures for any transaction. The vault door closed with a satisfying thunk as I placed copies of all documents in my safety deposit box. Sir, the bank officer said, these require special handling. Should anything happen to you, these instructions will be followed exactly. Thank you. That's exactly what I want. Margaret and I sat in her car afterward, reviewing our work. You've built a legal wall around yourself, George.
David can't touch your assets, can't make medical decisions, can't inherit anything. What about the criminal case? If they follow through with the Cruz plan, we'll have conspiracy, attempted murder, elder abuse, insurance fraud, multiple felonies. And if they back down, then you've protected yourself from financial abuse and can live peacefully. I studied the bank receipt in my hands, account numbers, signature cards, security protocols. There's one more thing I need, Margaret. What's that? If I disappear, if something happens to me before the cruise, I want this to trigger automatically. Police investigation, frozen assets, immediate arrest warrants. Consider it done. We drove back to my house in comfortable silence. The legal machinery was now in motion, unstoppable as a freight train.
David's car was in my driveway when we arrived. "Want me to come in?" Margaret asked. "No, let me handle this alone." David met me at the front door, his face tight with suspicion. "Where were you, Dad?" I was worried. "Doctor's appointment. Just routine." "You were gone for 4 hours. They had to run tests. You know how hospitals are." He didn't believe me, but he couldn't prove anything. "Dad, maybe I should start coming to your appointments with you, help you remember what the doctors say." "That's very thoughtful, son, but I can manage." "Are you sure? You seem different lately." "Different how?" "More alert, more like your old self." I smiled sadly. "Good days and bad days, David. The doctors say that's normal." But I could see the wheels turning in his head. He was starting to wonder if his confused, helpless father was more aware than he appeared. That evening I heard him talking to Nancy in the kitchen. "Something's changed," he said. He's not as confused as he was. "Alzheimer's has good days and bad days. This feels different, more deliberate. You're being paranoid. Stick to the plan." I watered my herb garden in the growing dusk. The plants were stronger now, more established, like my legal protections. 6 weeks until the cruise. 6 weeks until they discovered just how aware their confused father really was. The next morning I called a locksmith. "I need all the locks changed," I told him. "Someone has been entering my house without permission." David's key no longer worked when he tried to visit that afternoon. He knocked, frustrated. "Dad, what's wrong with my key? I had the locks changed. Been having some break-in concerns." "Break-ins? Did you call the police?" "Just being cautious. A man my age can't be too careful." I handed him a new key, watching his face carefully. "Here's your copy. Try not to lose it." He pocketed the key, but I could see him calculating, wondering what else I might have changed. I opened a P.O. box at the post office that same day. All my important mail would now go there. Medical records, bank statements, legal documents. "This is a secure box," the postal clerk explained. "Only you have access." "Perfect. That's exactly what I need." I updated my HIPAA forms at the doctor's office, removing David and Nancy from my authorized contacts list. "From now on," I said to the nurse, "all medical decisions require my written consent. No exceptions. But what if you're incapacitated? Then you follow the emergency contact I've listed. No one else." Margaret's number was now the only authorization on file. I installed security cameras around my house that evening. Small, hidden devices that recorded everything. The camera in my kitchen captured Nancy bringing my morning coffee. The one in my bedroom recorded me palming the pills she thought I was swallowing. Everything was being documented now. David noticed the cameras 2 days later. "Dad, what are these?" "Security system. Been having some suspicious activity." "What kind of activity?" "People coming and going when I'm not here." Things moved around. It wasn't entirely a lie. They had been coming and going, searching through my papers, planning my disappearance. "Maybe you just forgot where you put things." "Maybe, but the cameras helped me remember." I could see him wondering what those cameras had already recorded. That afternoon, I updated my emergency contacts everywhere. The hospital, my doctor's office, the bank, the insurance company. Margaret's name replaced David's on every form. "Sir," the hospital registrar said, "are you sure about removing your son from your emergency contacts?" "I'm sure. Family dynamics change. I need someone I can trust completely." I opened new bank accounts at a third institution, this one requiring biometric identification for any transactions. My fingerprint and retinal scan were now the only keys to my finances. The money transfers were complete. David thought he had access to my accounts, but those accounts now contained exactly $100 each. My real assets were protected behind multiple walls of security. I tested the system that evening, called the bank, asked them to verify my account balance. I'm sorry, sir, but that information can only be released with proper identification. Can you come in person? Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. My phone rang an hour later. David. Dad, I tried to pay your electric bill today, but there was some problem with your account. What kind of problem? They said they couldn't access the funds. Maybe you should call them. I'll handle it tomorrow, son. Thanks for trying to help. But I could hear the frustration in his voice. His financial access to my life was gone. I watered my herb garden before bed.
The basil was lush now, the rosemary fragrant and strong, like my defenses. 4 weeks until the cruise. 4 weeks until David and Nancy discovered they'd been outmaneuvered by the confused old man they thought they were manipulating. I programmed my security system for the night. Motion detectors, door sensors, camera recording. If they tried anything desperate before the cruise, I'd have it all on video. Sleep came easily now. Not the drugged unconsciousness Nancy had been forcing on me, but natural rest, the rest of a man who'd taken control of his own life. Margaret and I met one final time at her office. The complete evidence package lay spread across her conference table like pieces of a complex puzzle. "This is everything?" she asked, reviewing the documents. "Everything. Financial records, medical fraud, cruise bookings, threatening letters from loan sharks." "And the recordings? Audio, video, photographs, all properly dated and witnessed." I signed the final documents with my father's fountain pen. The gold nib scratched across the legal papers, sealing David's fate. Each signature felt like armor being welded into place. "If anything happens to you," Margaret said, "this all becomes evidence in a criminal prosecution. Multiple felonies, George. David's looking at 25 to life. And Nancy? Accessory to attempted murder, elder abuse, insurance fraud, 15 years minimum." I sealed the evidence package with red wax, pressing my father's signet ring into the warm seal. "The bank has copies in the safety deposit box. You have copies in your office safe. Mrs. Johnson has a key to the P.O. box." "What about the criminal timeline?" "If I disappear during the cruise, the package opens automatically. Police investigation begins immediately." Margaret studied my face with concern. "George, you don't have to do this. We have enough evidence now to arrest them." "For conspiracy and elder abuse, yes. But not for attempted murder. I need them to actually try it. That's incredibly dangerous. I've been a trial lawyer for 40 years, Margaret. I know how to build an airtight case." She slid a business card across the table. "Detective Martinez, Miami Police. He specializes in maritime crimes. I've briefed him on your situation." "What did you tell him?" "That a client might become the victim of a staged accident at sea. He's prepared to investigate immediately if something happens." I pocketed the card carefully. "And if nothing happens? If they cancel the cruise?" "Then you've protected yourself and will pursue the financial crimes. Either way, justice gets served." We walked to the bank together. The vault door swung open with a heavy thunk. I placed the sealed evidence package in my safety deposit box, next to my updated will and trust documents. "Sir," the bank officer said, "these instructions are quite specific."
Should we be concerned? Just following my lawyer's advice. Estate planning can be complicated. Margaret and I stood outside the bank afterward. The afternoon sun felt warm on my shoulders. "I've done everything I can legally," she said. "The rest is up to you." "Thank you, Margaret, for everything." "George, promise me you'll be careful on that cruise." "I promise I'll be smarter than they are." I drove home slowly, savoring the feeling of complete legal protection. My house appeared different now, not just my home but my fortress. Security cameras recorded every angle. New locks secured every entrance. Hidden evidence documented every crime. David's car was in the driveway when I arrived. "Dad, we need to talk about the cruise." My heart rate quickened. Were they backing out? What about it? The booking agent called. They need final confirmation in medical clearance forms. Relief flooded through me. They were still planning to go through with it.
"Medical forms? Just routine stuff, proving you're healthy enough to travel." Nancy appeared from the kitchen, holding a stack of papers. "I've filled out most of it, George. Just need your signature. I read through the forms carefully. Medical history, emergency contacts, insurance information, everything designed to make my accidental death look legitimate." "These look fine," I said, signing each page. "The ship leaves in 3 weeks," David said. "Are you excited?" "Very much so. It'll be an adventure." "Yes," Nancy added quietly. "It certainly will be." That evening I sat in my herb garden as the sun set. The plants were thriving now, full and fragrant. I'd spent the day sealing my legal legacy, protecting my assets, documenting their crimes, ensuring justice would be served. But sitting among the herbs I'd planted, I felt something unexpected. Peace. Not because I'd outmaneuvered them, but because I'd chosen truth over deception.
For a year, I'd lived a lie to test their loyalty. That test had revealed their true nature, but it had also corrupted mine. Tomorrow, I would stop pretending to have Alzheimer's. I would face them as myself. Let them try to explain why a healthy, competent man needed to disappear at sea. The evidence was sealed. The legal machinery was in motion. Time to remove the mask. I found David in my kitchen the next morning, preparing my usual drugged coffee. "Good morning, son." "Morning, Dad. How are you feeling?" "Clear. Sharper than I've felt in months." He handed me the coffee cup. I set it down without drinking. "Dad, you should take your medicine." "I never had Alzheimer's, David." The words fell like stones into still water. David's face went white. "What?" "I've been pretending for a year, testing you, testing your loyalty." That's impossible. The doctors were never consulted. I forged the medical reports you found." I opened a drawer and pulled out the evidence folder. "I know about the gambling debts, the loan sharks, the cruise plan." David's hands began shaking. "Dad, I don't know what you think. I know you've been poisoning my coffee. Sedatives to make me more docile." I showed him photos of Nancy crushing pills into my morning cup. "I know about the insurance policy changes. Making yourself the beneficiary." Bank documents spread across the kitchen table. "I know about the cruise booking. The websites you researched about elderly passengers going overboard." "Dad, please, you don't understand." "I understand that my own son planned to murder me." David collapsed into a chair, his face in his hands. "We're desperate, Dad. The people I owe money to, they're going to kill us." "So you decided to kill me instead?" We thought you were already gone. The Alzheimer's. There is no Alzheimer's. There never was." I placed the recording device on the table between us. "This conversation is being recorded, David. Everything you say is evidence." "Evidence of what?" "Conspiracy to commit murder, elder abuse, insurance fraud." David looked up, his eyes wild. "You can't prove anything." "I can prove everything. Financial records, medical documents, audio recordings, video evidence." "Video?" "Security cameras throughout the house. I have footage of Nancy drugging my coffee. You searching through my papers, both of you planning my disappearance." David stood abruptly, pacing the kitchen. "Dad, we can fix this. Cancel the cruise. Forget the whole thing." "It's too late for that." "What do you mean?" "The evidence is already with my lawyer. And the police." "The police?" "If anything happens to me, if I disappear, if I have an accident, you'll be arrested within 24 hours. David's face crumbled. "I never wanted to hurt you, Dad. I don't know how this got so out of hand." "You wanted to hurt me the moment you decided I was disposable." "That's not how it was." "That's exactly how it was. I gathered the evidence papers." "I'm not your confused, helpless father anymore, David. I'm a competent adult who's documented your crimes." "What happens now?" "Now you live with the consequences of your choices." "And the cruise?" "Oh, we're still going on the cruise." David's eyes widened. "What?" "I want to see how far you're willing to go. I want the attempted murder charge." "Dad, no, please. You made your choice, David. Now I'm making mine." I walked toward my bedroom, leaving him sitting in the kitchen with the evidence of his betrayal spread across the table. "I never had Alzheimer's," I called back to him. "But I wish I could forget what you planned to do to me." Nancy arrived an hour later, her heels clicking sharply across my kitchen floor. "David called me," she said without preamble. "He's having some kind of breakdown." "Good morning to you too, Nancy." "Cut the confused old man act, George. David told me everything." I smiled calmly. "Then you know I've been documenting your crimes for months." "We haven't committed any crimes." I placed her journal on the table. Her neat handwriting filled every page with calculations about insurance payouts and inheritance schedules. "George's life insurance will pay $2 million, plus the house value and retirement accounts. We're looking at $4 million total." Nancy's face tightened. "That's just planning, financial planning. If George has an accident during the cruise, there's no investigation period. International waters mean quick payouts." "You had no right to read my private journal." "You had no right to plan my murder." I opened another folder. "Video evidence of you drugging my coffee. Audio recordings of you discussing my accident. Financial records showing you've been stealing from my accounts. Those accounts were opened in David's name, with forged power of attorney documents. That's identity theft and fraud." Nancy sat down hard, her composure finally cracking. We're in debt, George. Serious debt to dangerous people. I know about the loan sharks. I've seen their threats. Then you understand why we had to do something. I understand why you're desperate. I don't understand why murder seemed like the solution. You were disappearing anyway. The Alzheimer's was taking you away piece by piece. There is no Alzheimer's, Nancy. There never was. She stared at me. That's impossible. I've been testing you, both of you, to see what you'd do when you thought I was vulnerable. Testing us? And you failed. Spectacularly. Nancy's mask slipped completely. Her voice turned cold, calculating. So what now? You turn us in, destroy your own family? I didn't destroy this family, Nancy.
You did.
David will go to prison. David made his choice when he decided to kill me. And what about Rachel? You'll orphan your own granddaughter? Rachel will be fine. She'll be better off without parents who think murder is acceptable. I stood up, indicating the conversation was over. I didn't choose to exclude you from my life, Nancy. I chose to protect myself from people who wanted me dead. This isn't over, George. Yes, it is. You're no longer welcome in this house. I held out my hand. House keys, both sets. Nancy reluctantly handed over the keys. David will fight this. David can try, but the evidence is overwhelming. She walked to the door, then turned back. You're making a mistake. No, Nancy. The mistake was thinking I was helpless. After she left, I changed the alarm codes and updated the security system. The house felt cleaner somehow, lighter. 2 weeks until the cruise.
2 weeks until they discovered just how thoroughly they'd been outmaneuvered. Rachel knocked on my door that evening. Alone, just as I'd hoped. Hi, Grandpa, can we talk? Of course, sweetheart, come in. She sat across from me in the living room, her young face serious and concerned. Dad's been acting really weird. Mom, too. They keep whispering and looking upset. What kind of weird? Scared weird, like they're in trouble. I studied my granddaughter carefully. 16 years old, intelligent, observant. She deserved the truth. Rachel, I need to tell you something important, but I need your promise that you'll listen to everything before you react. Okay. For the past year, I've been pretending to have Alzheimer's disease. Her eyes widened. Pretending? Why? To test your parents, to see how they'd treat me when they thought I was vulnerable. And they failed the test, badly. I pulled out the evidence folder. Your father owes money to dangerous people, a lot of money. Your parents decided the solution was to kill me and collect my life insurance. Rachel's face went pale. Kill you? That's crazy. They booked a cruise, planned to make it look like I fell overboard accidentally. I showed her the documents, the cruise booking, the insurance forms, the medical reports. But they love you. Dad always talks about taking care of you. People do terrible things when they're desperate, sweetheart. Rachel studied the papers with the same careful attention she brought to her schoolwork. This is all real? Unfortunately, yes. What happens now? That depends on you. On me? I want to give you a choice. You can continue having a relationship with your parents, pretending none of this happened, or you can choose to have a relationship with me based on complete honesty. But not both? Not both. I won't pretend anymore, Rachel. I won't lie about who I am or what happened. She was quiet for a long time, processing everything. If I choose you, what happens to Mom and Dad? They'll likely go to prison. The evidence is overwhelming. And if I choose them, then you'll never see me again. I can't be around people who tried to kill me, even if they're family. Rachel stood up and walked to the window, looking out at my herb garden. You planted those herbs after you found out, didn't you? How did you know? Because you're not confused. You never were. The spacing is too perfect, the plant selection too smart. She turned back to me. I've been watching you, Grandpa. At family gatherings, when you seemed confused, your eyes were always alert, always watching. What else did you notice? Mom bringing you pills you didn't need. Dad going through your mail when you weren't looking. Both of them talking about money all the time. And what did you think? I thought something was wrong. But I never imagined murder. Rachel sat back down, her face determined. I choose you, Grandpa. I choose the truth. Even if it means your parents go to prison? They chose prison when they chose murder. Relief flooded through me. There are conditions, Rachel. No more lies between us, no pretending. If you ask me a question, I'll give you an honest answer. Even if the answer hurts? Especially then.
Deal. We shook hands solemnly. What happens next? Your parents still think they're going through with their plan. I'm going to let them try. The cruise? I need them to actually attempt murder before I can have them arrested for it. That's dangerous. Not as dangerous as they think. I've got backup plans, evidence packages, police contacts. I'll be protected. And after? After, we start building a real relationship. One based on truth instead of games. Rachel hugged me carefully. I love you, Grandpa, the real you. I love you too, sweetheart. More than you know. As she walked to the door, she turned back. Grandpa, what should I tell Mom and Dad? Tell them whatever feels right, but remember, no more lies between us. No more lies. After she left, I sat in my herb garden in the growing darkness. One relationship saved. One piece of family worth preserving. It would have to be enough. The next 2 weeks passed quickly. I established new routines, new patterns, new ways of living that reflected who I really was. Every morning I expanded my herb garden, oregano, sage, cilantro. The small plot grew into something beautiful and productive. Mrs. Johnson helped me build raised beds for better drainage. These herbs will feed you for years, she said, patting soil around a new thyme plant. That's the idea. Sustainability. More than just the herbs, I think. She was right. I was building a sustainable life, one based on truth, not deception. I volunteered at the legal aid clinic 3 afternoons a week, young lawyers seeking advice on complex cases. Mr. Williams, they'd say, this elder abuse case is challenging. What would you recommend? Document everything. Build an airtight case. Protect the victim first. Prosecute second. That's good advice. Experience teaches hard lessons. I established a scholarship fund in Rachel's name, money for students pursuing pre-law education. We want to help young people understand justice, I told the university administrator. That's very generous. Justice delayed is justice denied. Better to start early. The paperwork felt satisfying. Money diverted from David's expected inheritance, now serving a higher purpose. I made one more donation that surprised everyone, including myself. A check to the Gambling Addiction Recovery Center where David would likely be referred after his arrest. This is for treatment programs, I told the director. Comprehensive rehabilitation.
Is this donation in anyone's memory? In hope. In hope that people can change. The director looked puzzled but grateful. I didn't explain that the money was specifically for my son. David would need help dealing with his addiction after he got out of prison. If he got out of prison. My evenings were spent in the garden, tending plants and thinking about the future. Rachel visited twice a week now, real conversations about college plans, career goals, family history. Tell me about Dad when he was young, she asked one evening. He was brilliant, ambitious, always wanted to help people. What changed? Fear, I think. Fear of not being successful enough, not making enough money. Fear made him vulnerable to bad choices. Do you forgive him? I don't know yet. Ask me after the trial. We harvested herbs together. Fresh basil for pasta. Rosemary for roasted vegetables. Thyme for everything.
These taste different from store-bought,
Rachel said. Because they're grown with intention. With care. Like relationships? Exactly like relationships. The cruise departure was now 1 week away. David had become increasingly agitated, suspicious of my improved mental state. Dad, maybe we should cancel the cruise. You seem different. Different how? Too sharp, too aware? I'm having a good week. The doctors say that's normal. This doesn't feel normal. What feels normal, David? Planning your father's murder? He went pale. I never said anything about murder. You didn't have to, but I could see him calculating, wondering how much I really knew, how much I remembered. Nancy had become openly hostile, no longer bothering with fake sweetness. This cruise better be worth it, she muttered, thinking I couldn't hear. It will be, I replied. More than you know. She spun around, startled. What did you say? I said I'm looking forward to it.
But her eyes narrowed. She knew something had changed. The night before departure, I sat in my garden one last time. The herbs were thriving. Lush, fragrant, productive. Like the new life I was building. Tomorrow would bring the final test. David and Nancy's last chance to prove they were capable of murder. I watered each plant carefully, speaking to them softly. Take care of each other while I'm gone. I'll be back to tend you soon. The garden would wait for me. Unlike my son and daughter-in-law, the plants knew how to be patient. 6 months later, I sat in my expanded garden, reading the newspaper in the morning sunshine. The trial had ended 3 weeks ago. David, 22 years for conspiracy to commit murder and elder abuse. Nancy, 18 years for accessory charges and financial fraud. The crews had been everything I'd expected. Their confusion when I remained alert and healthy. Their panic when they realized their plan was failing. Their desperation when I revealed that everything had been recorded. The ship's security had arrested them before we reached international waters. Detective Martinez had been waiting at the dock when we returned to port. I picked up the old cruise brochure from my side table, the one they'd used to plan my disappearance. One-way ticket. He's not coming back. Nancy had been right about one thing. I hadn't come back. The confused, helpless man who'd boarded that ship had stayed at sea. In his place, I'd returned as myself. Clear-minded, self-determined, fully aware. I didn't disappear. I appeared. Rachel knocked on my back gate. "Morning, Grandpa. Ready for your driving lesson?" Absolutely. She'd turned 17 last month. College applications were due soon. Her essay about justice and family loyalty had been powerful enough to earn early admission to 3 law schools. "Any word from Dad?" "A letter yesterday. He's entered the addiction program." "Are you going to write back?" "Eventually, when I'm ready." We walked to my car together. A new Honda, practical and reliable. The old sedan had too many memories. "Where do you want to practice today?" I asked. "Downtown. I need to get comfortable with city traffic." As we drove, I thought about David's letter. Apologetic, ashamed, asking for forgiveness he hadn't yet earned. "Grandpa," Rachel said as we stopped at a traffic light, "do you think people can really change?" "I think they can choose to change. Whether they succeed depends on how much work they're willing to do." "And Dad?" "Your father is learning that actions have consequences. Whether he learns anything else remains to be seen." The light turned green. Rachel navigated the intersection smoothly, confidently. "I'm proud of you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For choosing yourself. For not letting them destroy you. I'm proud of you, too, for choosing truth over comfort." We drove in companionable silence until she spoke again. "The herb garden looks amazing this year." "It should. It's been growing for 6 months without interference." "Like you. Like both of us." That evening, I sat in my garden as the sun set. The basil was ready for harvesting. The rosemary had grown into a proper bush. The thyme spread in fragrant carpets between the raised beds. Mrs. Johnson waved from her fence. "Beautiful evening, George. Every evening's beautiful when you're free to enjoy it." "Any regrets?" "About the trial? No. About testing them in the first place?" I considered the question carefully. "Yes, I regret that. Playing sick, living a lie, it corrupted the relationship from the beginning. But it revealed their true nature. Maybe. Or maybe it created the circumstances that brought out their worst impulses. You'll never know for sure. No, I'll never know who they might have been if I'd trusted them from the start." I gathered herbs for dinner. Fresh basil, aromatic rosemary, delicate thyme. Tomorrow Rachel and I would cook together, plan her college visits, discuss her future, a future built on honesty instead of tests. The cruise brochure went into my compost bin that night, food for next year's garden. From deception, truth had grown. From manipulation, authentic relationship had flourished. I hadn't come back from that cruise. I had finally arrived.